of the big political stories of the week. Economic freedom fighter leader Julius Malema had his first public engagement since the departure of his deputy Floyd Shivambu, who joined the Umkhonto weSizwe party. Malema encouraging the party members to focus on building the party and on saying they must ignore the noise that is on social media. Shivambu's new party, meanwhile, announcing its high command structure, including his role as national organizer, Floyd Shivambu, that is. Well, joining me now is UNISA's political sciences professor, Dirk Kotzé. Prof, a very good afternoon to you. Thanks very much for your time. I want to start where Junior Khumalo, my colleague, left off. The DA ministers were conspicuous by their absence today at that Imbizo. But of course, the presidency says, no, don't read too much into it.
Yes, I think we speculate. I've heard about this a little bit earlier on already. And I think there is certainly a sense that it looks as if it can be a message. I think where I would start is to think that, that the current form of the Gauteng government, then the executive committee of the executive council of it, is obviously problematic, and it's a minority government. It doesn't include the DA. There was lots of talks at the time when the coalitions were formed about it. And I think the DA feels that the current dispensation in Gauteng is not yet as it should be, and it should include them, and they should have a fair representation in it. So I don't know if it is a hidden message to say to them, we don't, in a sense, accept the current dispensation as it is. But if the message comes from the government through the deputy minister, as we listened now, it's clear they haven't made it clear that this is indeed what that message will be. The other side of it is that they objected to the fact that Imbizos are, in their view, too expensive, and that maybe other forms of public communication should happen. I don't know if that is another reason, maybe not for participating in it. And then they tried, the DA in general, tried to present an image of themselves as a team of ministers who are hard at work. So if this is a way of saying, well, we have other things, more pressing matters to do, and I think this is what the deputy minister was sort of alluding to some extent with respect to all ministers and deputy ministers, then it might be also an explanation.
And you have in Gauteng the ANC having already declared that it wants to return to power in the other metros as well. It's now targeting Tshwane.
Yes, that is an additional factor, I think, which can be taken into account. Although I attended a meeting a few days ago, which included persons like John Steenhuisen and as well as the executive mayor, and they didn't say anything like that. It was as part of there's a by-election that is going to take place next week, which is a very critical one for the coalition, because the coalition has a majority of only 2 seats. So if they don't retain this seat, then the majority becomes only 1 seat, which is so marginal that is far from being comfortable. So there's lots of developments taking place with respect to this, but I don't see yet a standoff between the ANC and the DA with respect to, especially in the context of the government of national unity.
And in the city of Johannesburg, you have the ANC making the circle bigger. So to speak, you now have an action as a speaker of the city of Johannesburg, with the blessings, blessings of the ANC, following, of course, the election of their Dada Morero as the mayor of the city.
Yes, I think this is significant, but a natural follow-up for the understanding or agreement that exists between the ANC and Action SA now. It's not a formal agreement in terms of a coalition government agreement, but it is what has been in past referred to as a confidence and supply agreement. which means that the Action SA will support the ANC at important points in terms of voting in the council, for example, the election of a mayor or the budget approval, but they will not be members of the mayoral committee. So I think this is a manifestation or an outcome of that agreement to include Action SA in an important position in the legislature, in the council of the metro. So and in that way, it binds Action SA more into that agreement with the ANC, as well as the fact that, but what at the same time I think is highly significant is that the leader, Herman Mashaba, has been absolutely adamant during the time of the election that he will never cooperate or work with the ANC. So that has been a shift in the approach or the position of Action SA with respect to cooperating, because they are obviously not part of the government of national unity.
Now, outside, of course, of the politics of governments of national unity of whatever kind, those who are outside of GNU have also had quite an eventful week. The MK party yesterday announcing its handpicked, I should say, leadership, and telling us that they are not going to an elective conference anytime soon.
Yes, I think that's a very significant announcement. It's the National High Command. Incidentally, it's the same name that was used in the early 1960s under the leadership of President Mandela, when the leadership of the original Umkhonto we Sizwe was established. And so they follow very much the historical tradition of even using the same names. It includes, as the national organizer, it includes Floyd Shivambu, as well as the other 6 members that we know of to a large extent, like the president, Zuma, the deputy president, former judge Prof, and then the national spokesperson and so on. But none of them are elected or have been elected. And as you indicated now, they also argue very, very strongly against any form of elective conference, because President Zuma apparently said that it's been manipulated, conferences, national conferences in general, and that they don't want that within MK. I think from a more broader perspective, the public in general will say, well, it's a bad reflection on the notion of internal democracy that must exist also within political parties and not only in the public domain. And that is therefore, it raises a serious question mark about what will be ultimately the public or the members' involvement and in decision-making within MK. And to what extent there will be a broader form of participation in the party. As I understand, one of the main tasks of Floyd Shivambu is to establish a branch structure at local level, as well as then also provincial structures. So it's a clear acknowledgement that they have actually nothing or very little on the ground at this stage. And therefore, they possibly will be able to say also, but because of that, there is no foundation for a national conference, elective conference. But if they continue to use this position that they rather are going to handpick their leadership in terms of public participation in the party for it, I think there will be a backlash against it within the party. And for no party, it is good to pretend that there's a top of an elite that actually controls the party and the honorary members don't have much of a say about it.
Oh, they are citing issues of destabilization, concerted efforts by people to undermine them, that they have also been infiltrated, and so on. But other people have raised that, I mean, if you manage things the way we've seen them being managed, I mean, already you have 10 MPs, you know, that have gone to court, saying they want their membership to be restored, but also they want to stay on as MK party MPs in Parliament. One wonders what has caused what. In other words, is President Jacob Zuma and his leadership core reacting to what they perceive or regard as infiltration and people who are hell-bent on destabilizing them? Or is it as a result of how they manage the party that they are, shall we say, rebellious elements within themselves?
Well, I think I would go more for the latter position that you have expressed now, and that is that, first of all, the way in which the party was established and identified the candidates for parliament has not gone through the same procedures as the other political parties. And it looks like many of them were, in a sense, handpicked, or they came from supportive structures like the Triple M, for example, and others that made it possible for MK to get onto its feet. I think the point which is again problematic is to what extent does that prepare them to have a very solid base in parliament? And my impression is that they've realized that they don't have much capacity in parliament. Most of the members that they have there have no parliamentary experience, including their leader there, Dr. Slope. He has been a judge, but never a member of parliament or in any other form of legislature. And that they need more persons with recognizable names or identities, as well as more capacity. And that is why they've, for example, sent now to the NCOP persons like Brian Molefe, Lucky Montana, Siyabonga Gama, and others, as persons who, again, don't have parliamentary experience and are more high-profile persons, although they are on the Zondo Commission lists. But at the same time, they are hopefully going to present more of a presence of MK in Parliament. In the National Assembly, I suspect that ultimately Floyd Shivambu will go back to Parliament, to the National Assembly, in order to assist. He is now the former chief whip of the EFF and therefore has lots of experience about the intricacies of Parliament. And the members of MK, again, don't have that. So in that sense, I think they realize that the task of a new party like MK, is much more demanding than what they thought of, and what they know experience means that they are not very well prepared for that.
And of course, I mean, lastly, hurting on the other hand, following the departure of their Deputy President Floyd Shivambu, is the party that the MK party displaced as the third largest in the country, and that's the EFF, who are, of course, having their first meeting since Shivambu's departure today in Durban.
Yes, I think it's very significant that it is Durban. This is where they had the launch of their election manifesto. This is the province where Floyd Shivambu was the campaign manager of the EFF, or the leader of their campaign there. This is where they did very well in 2019 and increased their support with about 7%. But now with this election, they lost all of that 7%. They are back to 2%. And I think this is one of the possible reflections on Floyd Shivambu. But the point is that I think in the past, KwaZulu-Natal was regarded by the EFF as most possibly their best growth point, or where they have the most potential in order to develop further than the 10% that they had in the past. Now it went in the opposite direction, and it's one of the ways in which the party must be able to try to rescue themselves. Because in other provinces, like, for example, the smaller provinces, like, for example, the Northern Cape, they increased their support. In the Eastern Cape, they increased their support. In the Western Cape, they increased their support with about 1%. But in Limpopo, which is one of their main provinces, they stayed stagnant or at the same level. And ironically, in Mpumalanga, where there was now the presence of MK party also, they didn't lose votes against or to the benefit of MK, but they actually increased their support. So it's a mixed bag situation of the EFF. But the reason why they lost in total about 1.5% is because they lost the votes in KwaZulu-Natal as well as in Gauteng. So that is, I think, where they have to make the real turnaround before they can think about recovering as a political party.
Professor Dirk Kotzé, thanks very much, as of course we sum up some of the big political